Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in my past videos, I talked about how to target specifically fat when losing weight. However, in this video, I'm going to talk about what most people want to get rid of, which is belly fat, or in other terms, subcutaneous fat. I also want to focus on visceral fat because this is often not talked about, but it's the fat that puts most people at major risk of health diseases. So at the end of this video, I hope you guys can understand the difference between visceral fat and subcutaneous fat and how to get rid of both of them. So let's talk about visceral fat, since I feel this is the one that most people aren't too familiar with. So visceral fat is fat that is literally stored in your organs, such as your liver, pancreas, etc. So it's not a fat that you can actually see for yourself because it's located in your organs. However, even though it's not fat that you can visually see, it is a very dangerous form of fat because this is the fat that puts people at risk for health diseases such as diabetes, fatty liver disease, hypertension, and other conditions. I have so many patients that look healthy on the outside, but when I review their labs, they have fatty liver, they have high cholesterol, they have all these abnormal values because their visceral fat is high. There are a few ways that you can tell if your visceral fat is high. So one major way is through your waist circumference. So for women, your waist circumference should not exceed over 35 inches, and for men, it should not exceed over 40 inches. That is why people with visceral fat tend to have more of an apple-shaped figure because they tend to hold more fat in their waist, while people with more subcutaneous fat tend to have more of like a pear-shaped body because they tend to hold body fat in either their hips or in their thighs. So another indication that your visceral fat is high is if you start to experience health issues such as an abnormal glucose level. I have so many patients that look healthy on the outside, but when I review their labs, they have fatty liver, they have high cholesterol, they have all these abnormal values because their visceral fat is high. Okay, so with all this said, how exactly do we get rid of visceral fat? So in order to lose visceral fat, we're going to take the following steps. We're going to increase our cardiovascular exercise, and we're going to limit or at least track our carbs and sugar because visceral fat is very highly linked to abnormal glucose levels and insulin resistance. That's why people that do the keto diet are very successful in losing their visceral fat because they're limiting carbs in their diet. Okay, so now let's talk about subcutaneous fat. So this is the fat that most people hate because you can literally see it. However, health-wise, the type of fat is actually less concerning than visceral fat, and it's more of an issue because it's not aesthetically pleasing to your eye. So how do we get rid of subcutaneous fat? So for subcutaneous fat, we are going to take the same steps that I've discussed in my past videos, and I'll leave the link below in case you guys want to see more of a detailed review of that. But essentially what we're going to do, we're going to incorporate strength training, we're going to be in a slight calorie deficit, and we're going to focus on protein so that we can increase muscle and burn fat. So in reality, you can really incorporate a routine to help ensure that both your visceral fat and subcutaneous fat are low by incorporating a mix of both strength training and cardiovascular exercise, completing a calorie deficit, and tracking your macros to make sure that you're not over-exceeding when it comes to carbs and sugar. Okay, so that's all I have for you guys. I hope this video was helpful in helping you understand the difference between visceral fat and subcutaneous fat and how to decrease both. So please leave any ideas for any upcoming videos and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, guys.